Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here today with Bruce McCurdy. Hey, Bruce.
Hey, David, welcome back from your big overseas junket.
Yes, went to Paris and tour of the Baltic, St. Petersburg.
Oh, wow.
And St. Petersburg, I was astonished, Bruce, because I had
hmm
been to Moscow in 1994, and it was as Donald Trump might put it, a crap hole kind of
Uh-huh.
city. But St. Petersburg was absolutely gorgeous. And you should see their new hockey arena. Amazing. So when I hear players going to play in St. Petersburg, I'm not going to be thinking, oh, they're going to this crap hole.
hmm
It is. I mean, it's not as gorgeous as Paris, but it is an astonishingly beautiful city with canals and all kinds of buildings from the pre-communist era that survived the Second World War, and then the palaces of these czars are just unbelievably lavish, like 150 statues and one of them covered in fountains covered in gold, most of them. So Bruce, we are going to be digging into. I think we can finally safely judge Ken Holland's summer and how he did this summer. I think it's
Think
pretty
he's done?
much. Well, there might be a PTO or that we're going to miss here, but he's done. I think he's done with Puljujärvi. So I think that's run its course
Yep.
with Puljujärvi signing. So I think we can give him a grade, safely give him a grade. What do you think?
Well, we can certainly give him an interim grade, and we'll certainly, I'm sure, be in position to talk about anything he does between now and the end of September as it happens. But I mean, we're entering rookie camp starts tomorrow, so I think we can say summer is technically over, and anything else he does will be part of his fall.
Yeah. Fortunately, doesn't have any RFAs to sign like so many teams do. There's a few of them
So,
out there. There's probably what 15, 20 total.
there's at least 10 sort of star level
Yeah.
UFAs or RFAs, pardon me. And other than Sebastian Aho signing offer sheet on July 1st, no less, and quickly getting matched by his parent team, the Carolina Hurricanes, there's been zero budging of any of the other guys. Like everybody's waiting for someone else to set the bar.
What are they waiting for? I don't get it. Like honestly, you'd think someone would have settled by now,
They would.
but it seems like it's a game of either it's a game of chicken or chicken shit
Uh-huh.
because no one's signing. Someone should sign. Like what's
Yeah,
going on?
well,
Like I
Marner,
know.
Marner, Point, Kachuk,
Rantanen.
Laine, Rantanen, McAvoy, Werenski. Like there's a lot of star level young players that are out there in the mix that are uh, still still unresolved. And I mean, training camp proper starts in basically a week.
There's a lot riding on it for the players, but also for the agents. You
Mhm.
can't be the agent who gives the worst contract, right? Because then that's held over your head by the other agents probably forever. Like, oh, look at that agent for so and so. He only got 8 million per instead of 10 million per, right?
Right.
And that would be bad advertising. So I think that's driving a lot of it. Like on if I was guessing what the big holdup is, it's there's some competitive pressure on the agents to maximize for their clients, unrelated to just their own fiduciary interest to their client,
Right.
somewhat related to their is that too harsh a comment?
It's a reputation thing, and I mean everybody wants to win, right? The player wants to win, and the agent wants to win. They want to have the biggest and the best and the shiniest, and I think that's just human nature.
All right, so we're going to grade Ken Holland, and do you want to like give the grade off the top or hold it to the end?
Well, I guess if we give it up off the top, then we spend the rest of the podcast justifying it. And the other way to do it is to lay out the good and the bad things, and then and summarize it in the grade. So I kind of prefer the second, frankly.
Okay, we'll end off with the grades. We'll keep people in suspense.
All
What
right.
we'll do, Bruce, is we'll kind of go through the major moves
Mm-hmm.
and discuss how you think he did on them and how I think he did on them.
Okay.
So let's start in net. How do you think he did in with the Oilers goaltending situation? Essentially, bringing in, he made one move. He drafted
Right.
Carnivale, but we're not gonna. Let's not talk about the drafting because we don't
Right.
know. It's too early to tell. But he brought in Mike Smith. What is he? 37. He's
Hmm.
had some good years in the past, getting long in the tooth. Had a up and down year last year. What do you think of that move?
Well, I I'm I don't hate it as much as many people seem to. I think the key there was he absolutely had to get a goalie who was NHL experienced
Hmm.
because Koskinen really is not. He had to
Yeah.
get a guy who was a 1A or if you want a 2B, depending on how you want to set the goalies. To me, there we have like a 2A and a 2B. Uh, but the free agent goalies were either ridiculously expensive and huge long-term commitments, which the Oilers just there was no way they could get into the market for Bobrovsky, right? I mean, it just you can't even look at that. So I like that he signed a guy to a 1 year contract.
Yep.
I like that he signed a guy that he kept the cap hit a little bit down and put in some incentive bonuses that are pretty reasonable. You know, like he's going to make a couple of those bonuses, but if he makes a lot of those bonuses, that's good news for the team, probably. Especially the playoff bonuses, which is like 750,000 of the bonus pack. Uh, Smith last year he had a terrible, brutal first half of the season, and in the second half, he bounced back pretty good. In the playoffs, he was pretty good. He faced an awful lot of rubber against Colorado in that one series. Uh, he's known to be a competitive son of a gun. Uh, he's I think what's the long game for Holland here? I guess is the question. Is he trying to get the team to where they're competing for the Stanley Cup this year, or is he trying to build and put placeholders in place? And I'm seeing more number two that he's putting guys in who can hold a position and compete in that position while his cast of prospects, now impressive looking prospects, starts to build towards being NHL players.
Well, number two is one way to put it, Bruce. Might be a little bit harsh.
Well, okay, I hear you. I hear you.
Hey, Bruce, here's what I think. Um, when, so there was a number of goalies we were all talking about
Mm-hmm.
as possibilities, and when you look at the ones what they signed, so Semyon Varlamov, who has mentioned it, you know, he 4 years at 5 million. That's an overpay. Come on.
Yeah.
The number one thing you don't, what we've learned, I think, the painful lesson of that Oiler fans have learned over the years is the, to get a passing grade in the summer, a GM must not hand out a big money long term contract unless it's to a younger player. And we've just seen being beaten over the head with
Yeah.
repeated failures of UFA signings. So he avoided that here, right? The
Yep.
1 year thing
Absolutely.
is,
100%.
and that's so right there. It's like you passed. He passed.
Every UFA. I mean, the only 2 year deals that he gave out were to his own guys, Chason and Kara, and everything else was a 1 year deal.
And those were just 2 year deals.
Right.
So Varlamov got 5 million a year for 4 years. Robin Leonard got the 1 year at 5 million. So if
Yeah.
he had found a way to do that,
Yeah.
I think then we might
Len,
be saying that might have been the home run deal. Like there was, and so Mrazek got 2 years at 3.1. Now it depends what you think of Mrazek. Is he a better bet than Smith? He's certainly younger. I think we would have been happy with that deal, the Mrazek deal, maybe a little bit more than we are. But he needed someone of that caliber. So Smith's kind of in that range. And so maybe he would have, if he could have persuaded Robin Leonard or if he could have persuaded Mrazek. I don't know if they wanted Mrazek or not. There's the McElhaney deal. Some people like him. He's getting up there. He's 36 as well.
yeah.
So I'm you know, obviously we should be leery of a 37-year-old goaltender who's had a up and down year, and that's not exactly hopeful. And I think it's the biggest in terms of things that didn't really work out well for Ken Holland. That's the biggest question mark I have, and it's the biggest worry I have heading into the season is the goaltending. And it could be the thing that sinks the team this year more than anything else because Koskinen's a huge question mark, and
Yeah. Well,
so frank,
he inherited that question mark,
yeah,
and if he'd have gone out and signed a true number one and basically doomed Koskinen to be number two for 3 years at 4.5 million.
Oh God.
That's going to impact the payroll going forward. So he kind of had to work with the hand he was dealt. And I mean, Leonard, uh, 1 year at 5 million is great, but they didn't really have 5 million,
Well, they
right?
might have if they had really
If
prioritized.
they'd spent it all on goaltending, then maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think they might have been able to afford that, but that means no chase on, right? Probably. And
Well, means no.
okay, let's move on to the defense, what they did with the defense. So they drafted Broberg, and we'll find out how that turns out down the road. They bought out Andre Sekera. And I was initially uh, really against that because
I
I thought
recall.
Sekera, it'd be hard to get a better player
Hmm?
at for the same amount of money.
Hmm?
Um, when we see how things played out in terms of cap room and just how tough it's been for the Oilers, I think, to maneuver this summer, I think they did need that cap space in the end. And I think that my initial assessment might have been incorrect in that Caleb Jones, I think, is as good a player right now as Andre Sekera, probably better. They needed to find a place for Caleb Jones or someone like him, one of these, the four young
Hmm?
guys chomping at the bit: Jones, Pearson,
Yes.
Logson, and Bear. And so they needed to move someone. And so I was hopeful that maybe they could move Russell or Benning. That might have been really hard to do, especially with Russell with the no movement clause. So in the end, if I'm going to give like a C to the Mike Smith move, maybe a C plus, probably a C. Uh, I'll give like for what he did on defense, considering he absolutely had to make room because he has
Yeah.
Bouchard and Samorukov coming to the farm team. I'm going to give him a B for what he did with the defense. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a painful one. I mean, paying a guy like they're going to be paying Andre Sekera now for the next 4 years to not play for them is a painful move. And as a fan of Andre Sekera, I hate to see the guy go. I mean,
Yeah,
he had 2 good years here, and then the fates conspired to basically ruin his middle 2 years, and now his last 2 years are bought out. But the cap space is significant. I mean, they basically bought 3 million in cap room
hmm,
for each of the next 2 years. But I agree more even with your other point. It's all about roster space. They had last year when Sekera came back, the last 24 games, they had the same six pack of defensemen with Klefbom, Larson, Nurse, Russell, Sekera, Benning. Exact same six guys that had played the lion's share of the 2016-17 season and then played again. So 3 years straight. And the last 2 years, they hadn't been successful as a group. And in the meantime, you got all these guys bubbling under the guys you named Bear, Lagesson, Jones, Pearson
Person.
that's coming over, and even I'd say Evan Bouchard that has an outside chance at camp. And for those guys, I mean, looking up at the same six players again and saying, well, where the hell are we ever going to fit if this organization just keeps sticking with the same group that had brought them success a few years ago now? Uh, you got to break the logjam somehow. And maybe it's not the most creative way to do it, but maybe there was no trade there. I mean, Sekera's value was quickly established on July 1st when he signed for basically a quarter of his old pay and for 1 year. And there apparently was no trade for Chris Russell. And if they'd have bought Russell out instead of Sekera, they would have saved 3 million this year, but not next year.
And I think Russell's a better bet as a player because he's more durable. He has been than Sekera. Although I like Sekera better, slightly better as a player, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But Russell's been extremely durable, and that's really important. So something to
Yeah.
be said for that. And I would have preferred honestly that they moved Matt Benning. I think, but
Well,
that would
but
only be 2 million.
But the way it's going to work out now is they're going to have moved Sekera and open 3 million in cap space, and they're going to almost certainly replace him with someone making under or exactly 1 million. So
That's
they're
right.
going to save 2 million, which they then were able to use to address uh, other spots on the roster, primarily forward, which I'm sure we're going to talk about next because that's where the majority of the moves
Yeah,
are
so
made.
so you could look at it. They get rid of Sekera, but in place they get probably Caleb Jones.
Right.
or Joel Pearson and Alex Chason. So that's the deal.
Right.
All right, let's go to forward. Oh, did you give a mark on defense? Do you want to give a mark on that?
I was just going to give an overall mark, but I mean, I hate to call it addition by subtraction, but really that's all he did because all the other guys, other than the draft of Philip Broberg, which is way off in the future, all those other guys are already here. But he has, I think, the act of creating space for them and creating a bit of cap space in the process is a net positive.
We have all these young veterans in Larson, Clefbaum, and Nurse. It's really time these guys just play their
Yeah.
best hockey consistently, and
Yep.
it's been really frustrating the last 2 years
Yep.
since their strong play in the playoffs. I'm not particularly at this point particularly bullish on any of those three players, and they have all got to show that they're top four pairing demon in the NHL. Like I think all three of them have a lot to
Yeah.
prove, is what I would say. All right, forward.
Lots of moves.
So Bruce, before the Lucic trade, I was pretty down, I think, overall in the summer. And then I became extremely buoyant. So I just think that was I don't know, an A+ move might be a little high because they did have to eat some salary with James Neal. But man, they really needed to move out Lucic. He was just not the right fit at all for the Oilers. It was just so apparent. He was sinking whatever line he was playing with. I personally believe that a big part of Jesse Puljujärvi's problem in Edmonton came from having to play so much with Lucic.
Mm-hmm.
It was so difficult to get any sustained offensive zone pressure with him because he was either giving away the puck or too slow to get in quickly enough on the forecheck to win it. Lucic was. So, that's an A move. It's a move a lot of people didn't think was going to happen, but I had predicted it was going to happen just because I
You did.
thought someone was going to see more value in Lucic than the Oilers did, and that the Oilers would have to take a bad contract in return, but they would be able to move Lucic without having to swallow the worst poison pill. And that's what happened, Bruce. It was, I just think, a real feather in Ken Holland's cap and a huge relief to Oiler fans.
Yeah, well, they needed to change up the mix here for sure, and the Lucic situation had, he had the one bad year in 17-18 where halfway through the year his game fell apart and never came back. And a lot of people, myself included, thought he would bounce back in 18-19 with a much better season, and in fact, the opposite occurred. If anything, he was a worse player last year than he had been. In 17, he had one little burst where he scored 4 goals in 6 or 7 games in January, and that was it. I mean, he had 6 goals the whole damn year. And in the calendar year 2018, he scored 2 goals, which was the least amount of any NHL forward who played 60 games in calendar 2018. The $6 million man had fewer goals than all of the plugs and grinders and fourth line scrubs in the NHL for an entire year. And there was something in the chemistry that wasn't really there, and I don't want to talk much about chemistry, but I do believe it exists, and they didn't seem to be on the same page, and we've been through this movie before. We brought in other guys for their leadership, their veteran leadership to support our young guns who are on the way up, and it never seems to work out all that well.
Too old
So
and too slow, Bruce. I mean,
yeah,
they tried
wow.
the identity line, and Brodziak and
Oh,
Lucic were just too
yeah.
damn slow to keep up in the
That
modern
was
NHL.
that was the Oilers' identity last year. Too
Yeah.
slow, too slow. And as a group among the forwards, as we'll get into, they really have addressed the speed issue. I don't think James Neal is any burner, but I don't think he's slower than Milan Lucic either.
So I think I've told you this before. I don't know if I said it on the podcast, but when I read through the stories on James Neal from the Calgary media, I
Oh,
got the distinct feeling that he played about as well last year as Patrick O'Sullivan had played in his final year with the Oilers. It was
oh,
kind of a
oh,
sinking
oh.
feeling, like they really hated
Spare me,
his game. So
spare me.
he's got a lot to do if he's going to regain things. Of course, Neal isn't Patrick O'Sullivan. He's had a much better career, and
Mhm.
but he's 32, so we'll see. Again, though, I think that was an A move by a grade A trade. And so the other moves, Bruce, I just love some of the moves that I like the
Mhm.
Josh Archibald signing,
That's an excellent move. Yeah.
the Joachim Nygaard signing.
Hmm.
Um, the I don't know as much about, we're a little less excited about Haas, but we'll see how he turns out. And then the handling of Jesse Puljujarvi, I think, has also, in my mind, been an A move. He, it's clear that things weren't working out with Puljujarvi and the Oilers, and we're unlikely to this year. It's clear that Puljujarvi needs a bit more seasoning and maturity,
Yeah.
and he would run out of time in the AHL. You couldn't send him. So what a perfect thing! It's almost like they handed the Oilers like this huge gift. Like, if you don't trade us, we'll go play in Finland. It's like, really? Right on, go and stay there, play there a year or two or three until you're ready for the NHL, until you show absolute dominance. And I know there's a lot of talk that he'll never be back with the Oilers, but you never know. And things change in a year or two. He could be a
Oh,
different person by then. The situation on the Oilers is already different with different coach, different GM. There'll be a lot more different players at that point. So we'll see how this all turns out. But I thought, in the end, if he doesn't, I don't. That depends on who he gets, obviously. But not trading him, I think, was the absolute right move. And signing of Nygaard and Archibald. I'm a little less excited about the Chase on signing, honestly. If there was even like a hint of overpay, it might have been that. Although I don't hate it either. He is a useful player. It's only a 2-year contract. He's a hardworking player. But if we're completely honest, he was just a marginal two-way hockey player at even strength last year. At least that's my opinion. So
well, and 2.15 million was it
yeah.
that he got? I mean, that's that's in some ways a marginal contract for a
Mhm.
proven NHLer. I mean, for 22 goal scorer that he was last year, that's actually a lowball contract. Most of the guys that were in that neighborhood now, the argument can be made, and I think probably successfully, that it was a kind of a career year, one-off season for Chase on, and he'll come back to his true level. But I think his true level is probably somewhere around 15 goals,
Well, that would
and
be good.
he's there are ways that he can help the team. Uh, he was. I mean, it's not like the Oilers had so many goal scorers last year that they could afford to let them walk. Because I mean, they had four guys that could put the puck in the net, or five if you include Cassian, and that was it.
And he
So
was damn good on the power play. I'll give him
yeah,
credit for
he,
that. Like,
he was good in front of the net, and he sniped a few from there, and he screened a few from there, and he was way better in front of the net than Lucic was. That was one area where I was really disappointed in Lucic. I thought he'd be way better at that than he turned out to be. Uh, anyway, uh, the other guy, of course, Marcus Granlund,
yes.
that they signed on July 1st. Uh, Collectively, what I like about the group of guys that they sign, and especially the outsiders of Nygaard, Haas, Granlund, Archibald, is collectively, certainly the reputation is that they're all pretty fast skaters. And that is an area where the Oilers seriously lacked last couple of seasons. Was just speed. I mean, they got McDavid, so that makes them a fast team, right? Well, it doesn't make them a fast team. It makes them a team with one fast player, or, a couple of fast players. But the overall team speed was pretty lacking, and I think that's been largely addressed. And when you include the potential of, Caleb Jones on the back end, adding a little speed back there, the team should be a lot faster. Uh, what I also liked about what Holland did was the layers of competition that he's brought in.
Hmm.
And by that, I mean, he's got guys that are ready to, are close to ready to graduate from the AHL. You've got Tyler Benson, Cooper Marody, Kyler Yamamoto, one guy at each forward position that's 20 to 22 years old, that has uh, a fighting chance, but they're going to have to fight to get the chance. They're going to have to work their way through layers of competition. And by layers, I'm talking about the fourth liners within the Oilers that were already there, the jobs that they're trying to win. But the other guys brought in to fight for those fourth rounders, the guys from Europe, Haas and Nygaard, the depth players from other NHL teams in Granlund and Archibald. And also the Oilers' own depth players in the AHL who have a fighting chance at fourth line and extra forward duties, and players like Joe Gambardella and uh, Patrick Russell that they've added. You know, all of these guys are sort of legitimately in the mix for bottom of the roster jobs, and you can point at the body of work and say, well, he only addressed the bottom of the roster, not enough at the top. And that's a fair point. But what he did do at the bottom of the roster, I think, is that the Edmonton's bottom six will be will be faster. Uh, there's almost no way they won't score more goals. And because they scored as a group, that group last year scored so few goals, and there will be competition and hard competition for the jobs on the bottom end of the roster. So for that, I give Ken Holland a fair amount of credit.
It's a good thing that the players he signed all have the reputation, at least, of being fast skaters, Nygaard especially,
Yeah,
because the guys coming up from Bakersfield aren't particularly fast skaters. Benson, Marody, Russell, and Gambardella. Not one of them, I think, is fast.
Yamamoto's got some wheels.
Yamamoto is okay, like he's above average, but Benson and Marody certainly are highly skilled hockey players and
Right.
agile, but they're not fast. So they really did need to get faster,
Mm.
and looks like he did that. So it's exciting. What's exciting to me is we're going to see players like Nygaard and Persson, and hopefully be surprised by one of those two or maybe both of those two. They're both going to get a real shot at making this roster, and Haas as well. So yeah, it's I think he might have hit more of a home run with the forwards if he had been able to bring in a third line center
Yeah, that
who
three
was
C hole is
who was
just gaping.
fast, young, between like 27, 28, fast and young and aggressive. Now that's Haas is who he's
Maybe.
in the end who he's brought in, and he'll be competing with Cave, and we'll see about Brodziak. I think Brodziak's going to be going on long-term injury possibly. So, but you know, third and fourth line center right now, at least on my depth chart, I have Haas and Jujhar Khaira, and so that's a little bit scary.
Yeah, well, I wrote a couple of posts called "The Realist Guide to the Oilers Roster," and I said Gaetan Haas is a 3C type, but I'm not comfortable to project him as a 3C outright. I mean, maybe he'll surprise us and be able to do that job, in which case, great, that's fantastic. But to be counting on it is a bit of a dangerous game at this point.
To say the least. Yeah, it could be a huge hole, so we'll see how that
Uh,
goes. All
Ever
right,
since
Bruce.
that Ryan Strome trade, David,
Yes.
since that Ryan Strome trade, that 3C hole has reemerged. The Belanger Triangle. I've taken to calling the Oilers' constant perennial hole at 3C the Belanger Triangle in honor of you know who.
Yes, so like Bob Stauffer was talking about maybe Granlund playing center. I don't know.
Well, he used to play some center, but used to play some center, and 3C in the NHL is a bit of a stretch. And the interesting thing and a little bit worrisome thing about both Granlund and Archibald is that in both cases, their old team had RFA rights just to issue a qualifying offer. In both cases, they declined to do so, and you wonder why that might be. And the Oilers got him for a little cheaper in the case of Granlund, and Archibald at a very modest, affordable raise. But you wonder what was missing in their games that the other teams didn't just sort of automatically extend them. So, and the good news is that unsigned RFAs are cheaper free agents and younger free agents than the full old UFA market, and
Yeah, that is.
1 year each.
Yeah, so Granlund, Archibald, and Neil, three guys who I have penciled in the top nine are all cast-offs by their old teams.
Hmm.
And so the only people that the other teams wanted to keep were Haas and Nygaard, right? Who came over
Right,
from Europe.
right.
But they're coming over from Europe, so they're coming from inferior leagues. So fair enough.
I
So
do
Bruce,
I do think they did improve on the penalty kill with
yeah,
the guys that they added, and that's an area that desperately needs work. And the other thing to grade, I guess, Holland on this summer is his choice of coach, Dave Tippett. What do you think of that?
Well, Tippett has the reputation of getting the most out of weaker players, mediocre players. So he's the right guy for the Edmonton job.
Well, the top guys, you're pretty confident the top guys are going to produce. And Edmonton's bottom six has been letting them down so constantly for years that if Tippett is able to find the right collection of band-aids and duct tape and baling wire to put together a bottom six that can hold its own, that would be a huge step forward. So
Yeah.
let's let's hope he lives up to that reputation. Some would say they should have gone for a younger, cutting edge, 21st century coach. And I guess time will tell, but they certainly went out and got an NHL proven guy with a lot of track record, much of it successful.
I'm cool with the signing. That's Tippett seems he's been off 2 years. He seems good to go. Super keen. He's an experienced coach, successful. So I think they made a good choice in him. All right, Bruce, what's your overall grade? What are you going to give Ken Holland?
I think overall a B. I like the shake up. It can't be described as any other way. The Lucic for Neil. And I'm a little antsy about what we're actually getting in James Neal. Are we getting the guy with the wicked wrist shot who wound up on the outside of the top six in Calgary and couldn't fit in and is just chomping at the bit to get back into a scoring role, which is exactly where Edmonton does need top six wingers. Calgary really didn't. And so it's a better situation for him and he's got plenty to prove. And after 2 years of going to the Stanley Cup Finals, having long, long seasons and short, short summers, well, Calgary didn't go very far in the playoffs last year, now did they? And so he wound up getting a nice long summer and then a change of scenery. And I expect to have a very motivated player for at least the first year of the remaining four on his contract. So that's the big win. And like I say, I do like some of the layering and so on. I do see this as at least a 2 year build. And he just didn't have the cap space to do a lot. So he got a lot of what I call placeholders, 1 year, 1 million, 26, 27, 28-year-old guys that aren't going to be overwhelmed, but will provide a layer of protection that they're not saying, well, Tyler Benson has just got to make it in the top six or we're toast. I mean, they do have options. And only, some of the options are promoting young guys. And I think the young guys, when they're good enough, are going to be able to beat out the level of guys that got brought in, but
Yeah,
not
that's a
before.
huge thing. He's left some holes open so Benson can make this team if he's good
Hmm.
enough. And Caleb Jones can make this team if he's good
Hmm.
enough, and Bill Parison can. So I'm going to give him a B plus. He didn't
Okay.
give any killer stinker contracts.
Hmm.
He greatly improved the forwards by getting rid of Lucic and bringing in extra speed.
Hmm.
And I'm good with what's happened on defense. I think that the defense is largely on Larson, Clefbaum, and Nurse finally reaching their potential as NHLers this year and playing solid all year. And again, I think a real frustration the last 2 years has been those three players. Not one of those three players truly stepping up and being the player that I think they can be and have shown at times being that player consistently. So that's
Yeah,
that's a real key to
Nurse,
this season.
Nurse had some moments last year, and of course he put up some points. He was the first Oiler D man in 10 years to get to 40 points. But Adam Larson's season was particularly disappointing, and unless he has some kind of chronic injury, and of course there was rumors about his back last year. I mean, if that does prove to be chronic, then that's trouble. But you and I think everybody else knows that Adam Larson is a way better player than he played for the majority of last season. And he's one guy the Oilers need to bounce back, and I'm reasonably confident he will.
All right, let's leave it there, Bruce.
All
Thanks for
right.
talking
Well,
tonight.
yeah, thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks for your patience over the summer. I mean, there wasn't a lot going on, but we did get lots of feedback of people that like our podcasts, and we sure appreciate your listening and watching.
We do that, and we had to figure out a technical solution. So hopefully this is it. We're using Skype now to do this. So let's hope this works, Bruce.
Let's hope.
And in the meantime, and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.